Report School is brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds.
We're here at the Southwest Ag Conference, joined now by Dr. Dave Hooker. Thanks, Dave, for taking some time.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Hey, you've just basically finished a report, a presentation on what's on the 2015 Ontario Corn Committee trials. A lot really different this year. You spent the last year adding a part to it on hybrid specific response to intensive management.
Yes.
Tell us what we're going to see.
Well, that's what our goal is, to look at hybrid specific responses to management. So the previous trials that we've shown for more than 50 years through the committee, we've shown hybrid responses, and that's it. So that's our main treatment. What is the hybrid response to yield in terms of yield response? Okay, by hybrid. But growers they're wanting more information, and I can't blame them for wanting more information because we have so much data now. We have excellent data that shows just incredible hybrid specific responses to different management practices. So I've been working for fungicides for years and nitrogen rates for years, and all of my research trials I always have like 2 or 3 or 4 or more hybrids because I know that some hybrids are responding differently to fungicide, for instance, or nitrogen, or to higher plant population. So if these responses exist, I think growers need that information. They would like that good information to base their hybrid selection decisions on, because it's very important for hybrid selection and also for management decisions depending on the hybrid.
Let's talk about what you did here. Now, you did a standard management and an intensive management. What was the difference?
Yeah, so we have just 2 treatments. So a standard management package includes, a nitrogen rate that varies between 110 and 170 pounds per acre, depending on the location, as recommended by the Ontario Corn Nitrogen Calculator. And so that would depend on, the soil type and the area and nitrogen timing and whatnot. And then population, the standard population is 32 plants per acre. And then still the standard practice for corn production is no fungicide application. But the intensive package includes a combination of 3 inputs: increasing the plant population by 6,000 plants per acre to 38,000 plants per acre, increasing our nitrogen by about 50 pounds per acre, and that actual rate would depend on the nitrogen rate at each location, and also an application of fungicide at VT or at silking.
Now you did 8 locations, 62 different hybrids, 992 plots.
Yeah.
That's a big undertaking. Let's talk about what you've seen in the first year. What about yield response?
Yeah, so the yield response on average, when we look at the average yield response across all hybrids, it really depended on the location. So the more northerly location, for instance, Alma and Elora, on average, we had 29 bushel yield response in those 2 northerly locations. Ridgetown and Dresden, those are the 2 southerly ones, and we did not seem to see those responses to intensive management of those 3 inputs applied together, so they were a little bit less in the southerly locations. But the hybrid specific responses, that is the interest in these trials. And so there's 1 hybrid at Alma and Elora that yielded 54 bushels, advantage to that intensive management package. Very responsive hybrids. And so are those hybrids, would that be a consistent response year after year? That's one thing that we have to test. We also recognize hybrids that did not seem to be responsive to intensive management. So those hybrids, again, are of interest, because if I had high yields without having to input lots of expensive crop materials or inputs like extra seed, fungicide, and nitrogen, maybe those higher yielding ones would be more economic without those intensive inputs. So all of that really plays a big role in managing corn hybrid selection decisions and also management decisions as well.
Now, you want to talk about the bottom line here for a second. You've got a lot of different locations, but I think at Alma, for example, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, average cost was the equivalent of 16 bushels. Average jump or yield response was 24.
Yeah, that's 34.
34.
Yeah, at Alma. So one of our most northerly locations, that was the most responsive location on average. 34 bushel yield response, and it only really costs us like 16 bushels of corn to pay for those inputs. You know, that's at $5 corn. Corn is a little bit less now, so maybe it might be 17 or 18 bushels worth of inputs. So on average, we made money on average at the Alma location when averaged across the hybrids.
Talk about, I was fascinated by the fungicide part of this equation, and stay green, keeping that plant green, keeping it, working all the way through the season. Talk about, the role of fungicides here and what you're learning, basically how these hybrids are responding.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things of this trial, especially what I'm particularly interested in, why some hybrids are responding so much to intensive management, to inputs, whereas other hybrids are hardly not responding at all. So we need to develop kind of an understanding on why some hybrids are more responsive than others. And so we identified a couple of variables that when we look at corn plants, we can pretty much assess whether it could be a responder or not a responder. And two of the main variables that we looked at this year was the stay green effect. So stay green means it's a rating that's taken fairly late in the season. It's the ability for that corn plant, that canopy, to remain green late in the season. And so theoretically that would extend the grain field period. And so the highly responding hybrids, the hybrids that had the highest yields, tended to have that long green, functional green leaf area very long into the season. So that was important. And also disease control is important as well, because some of the hybrids had 21%, for instance, disease severity, leaf area infected with disease, and that would have a very important result on stay green as well, and also some physiological effects that diseases have on corn grain fill and development and yield potential as well. So leaf disease and stay green effect, those were our two main variables that we saw trends with when we're looking at this intensive response.
Yeah, lots of data to dig through. A couple of other quick things. CHU, corn heat units. It looked like both low and high heat unit corn responded to intensive management.
Yeah, so that was interesting. So one of the common questions that we get would be if you grew a short season hybrid, would that respond as well or not as well compared to a full season hybrid in a particular area? So our data was very consistent across all of our 8 locations, 62 hybrids, 992 plots. Very consistently, the hybrids that matured were full season. When we compared the response to hybrids that were matured early genetically, so early maturing hybrids, they both had the same response in terms of there was no interaction with hybrid maturity.
So hey, year one, you got data, and I know you love data and you love multiple years of data.
Right.
What should farmers think? What should they do with this data? How should they sort of approach it now? And again, what do you need to do in the future here, obviously?
All right, so I'm very excited, of course. I was very excited today to present this data because it shows this fantastic trends and, I guess, potential for use. And so I would have a big caution flag, fly a big caution flag when we're looking at this data. We want to apply it to real, hybrid selection or management decisions. It's good to understand this, and it provides data and helps our understanding. But still we need to make sure that all of these results are repeatable. Because if they're not repeatable, if we can't predict the results from one year to the next, it's very difficult or impossible to recommend this, put this in our recommendations. And because if it just generates nonsense recommendations, it wouldn't have that much value. So we're looking forward to repeating this again next year to see if we can repeat some of these, or identify some of these high responders, identify the low responding hybrids, and if they're repeatable from one year to the next, that provides excellent information.
And all available right now, gocorn.net.
So gocorn.net, this data isn't quite available right now, but it will be available in the second week of January. So maybe when this video is released, I'm hoping that data will be available and growers can at least give us some input and generate some maybe thought processes in terms of how we can use this hybrid data, and it all really benefits the corn industry and agricultural industry when we can do that.
Awesome, Dave. I think I can pull a few strings and make that happen for you.
Awesome. I know you could.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, thanks.